Assault rifle recoil is one of, if not the hardest skills to learn in PUBG. Due to its completely random and unpredictable nature, there is no universal answer on how to control recoil other than just time and practice. So in this video, we're going to be going over all there is to know about AR recoil, so by the end, you'll have all the tools and knowledge necessary to master PUBG's most robust weapon class. Just a quick preface here, recoil control is something that is going to take you a lot of time to perfect. For instance, here's little old me, with about 3,100 hours in the game, I can confidently say that my recoil control is decent at best. But when compared to Tickleton with over 15,000 hours in PUBG, him and other pros alike have perfected the art of recoil on assault rifles. My point being here is that recoil control is not something you're going to pick up and master within the first 10 to 50 hours of this game. It's going to take a lot of time, dedication, and most importantly, patience to perfect. Even practicing as little as 15 to 20 minutes a day will dramatically improve your skill set. First, we wouldn't be able to talk about recoil control without discussing sensitivity. I'm a pretty firm believer that there is no one universal sensitivity setting that is perfect for everybody. So to make sure I'm not duplicating any efforts here, I would highly recommend you go check out my video on how to find your best sensitivity settings in PUBG, which I will link down below, so you can go check that out after this video. Every AR in PUBG has its own distinct vertical climb speed, which affects how much recoil it has, which will require you to have different levels of muscle memory when it comes to how fast you pull your mouse down. For example, I did a quick spray of all fully auto assault rifles with no grip or muzzle attachments, then compared them side by side. The Barrel, Ace, and AUG all have the highest level of natural vertical recoil, while the G36, SCAR, and K2 had the lowest levels of vertical climb. I would heavily suggest you find 2 to 3 ARs that you feel the most comfortable with and strictly use those when practicing the tips shown in this video. Some good starter ARs would be the M416, the SCAR, or the G36, since they tend to have decent damage output and stability. Then work your way to some of the higher skill ARs like the AUG or Barrel once you become more confident. If you want to review this image again after the video, I'll be placing it in the recoil patterns section of my Discord, which you can find in the video's description. When compared to horizontal recoil, vertical recoil is actually a lot easier to handle, since the only thing you really need to do is pull your mouse down. If the AR has a faster vertical climb speed, it's going to require you to pull your mouse down a lot faster in order to compensate. The one thing I see that trips up a lot of newer players is always that initial jump from the first to second bullet when you initially fire. The first to second shot have the greatest gap in vertical climb, while the rest of the bullets have a very close and repetitive pattern. There are two ways you can handle this initial shot recoil. There's a beginner and a more advanced version of doing this. The first and more beginner-friendly approach would be to not even worry about that first to second bullet jump. Aim your red dot center mass, fire, and only worry about controlling the remaining bullets. Start by practicing this in bursts, then gradually work your way up to longer sprays. The more advanced version of mastering that initial shot jump requires you to move your mouse at 2 different speeds within the same burst or spray. Because that first to second shot has that bigger gap, it'll require an incredibly quick pull down, followed by a slower, more regulated pull. Much like how we practice in the beginner version of this, start by shooting in short controlled bursts and really focus on that initial jump, followed by a smooth pull down. You'll know you're doing this right when you have consistently tight groupings on every burst, and again, once you feel more confident with that, slowly work your way towards longer sprays. If you still find yourself struggling with vertical recoil and the gun continues to climb regardless of you pulling down, try increasing your vertical sensitivity multiplier for something that works best for you and what feels most comfortable. But as we continue to practice, the overall goal should be to try and get that vertical sensitivity multiplier as low as we possibly can, as lower sensitivity settings tend to lead to more consistent spray control. There is a big difference in vertical recoil when it comes to crouching versus standing. While it's always ideal to be shooting from the crouch position, you're going to find yourself in a lot of situations where you're going to be shooting over a hill, out of a window, over a car, or any piece of cover where shooting while standing is required. So as you continue to practice vertical recoil, I would heavily suggest doing this from both the crouch and standing position, so that way you're truly ready for any encounter that happens during a match. Horizontal recoil on assault rifles is completely random and is, quite frankly, the hardest aspect of shooting these guns. Aside from any assistance you might get from foregrip and muzzle attachments, there are really only 2 ways you can control horizontal recoil. The first, which would be the hardest of the two, and that is making micro adjustments. This is something that is going to take an insane amount of hours to practice, and mastering it only really comes with experience and an insane amount of patience. Micro adjustments, in short, are when you are doing your vertical pull down, whatever way your gun starts to shift towards the left or to the right, you have to instinctively counter that as you continue your pull down, almost making like a snake-like pattern with your mouse as you spray. And while this is something that I'm still in the practice of perfecting, there's one training routine that I've put into play that's actually helped me learn how to control horizontal recoil a lot more. And it's going to sound kind of silly when I say this, but that's by shooting poles in the training grounds. When shooting, try to keep your dot on the pole as best you can. If you start to see your red dot veering a little to the left, pull slightly to the right, and vice versa. This is actually something that I would recommend shooting in longer sprays first, then transitioning to shorter bursts, which are going to feel so much easier than longer sprays. Trust me when I say it's a lot harder than it looks, but the whole point of this practice is to kind of train your brain to react naturally to the horizontal randomness of assault rifles and make you feel more in sync with your gun of choice. The second and much easier way of combating horizontal recoil is by leaning into your sprays. When you're spraying at a target, if you start to see your recoil veering off to the left or to the right, try leaning in the opposite direction. In the simulated situation where you can see the horizontal recoil is starting to take off in one direction, I counter that by leaning in the opposite direction, which allows me to recenter my reticle without making any form of adjustments to my mouse whatsoever. Leaning really only affects recoil within the first 2 shots, which take off in a diagonal direction depending on which side you're leaning towards. After that, the remainder of the spray handles exactly the same way it does if you were crouching or standing. Couple of additional tips for perfecting recoil control with ARs. Practice shooting bursts and longer sprays. Practice shooting targets in short controlled bursts, focusing on initial shot accuracy and keeping your spray as tight as possible. Because time to kill is so short in this game and you can take someone out with only 3 to 4 shots, that initial burst in a close quarters fight is critical. Thankfully, there are a ton of in-game resources that you can use in the training grounds to perfect your accuracy when shooting in bursts. There are a ton of spots all over the training grounds that you can practice peeking and shooting in bursts on something as simple as a mannequin or any other random player that's just standing around. Focus on reticle placement and making sure that your first couple of bullets are always on point. You should be ADSing, shooting a couple bullets, pulling off, moving a little bit, rinse and repeat. If you watched any of my previous videos or my live streams, you'll know that Aim Labs is by far my favorite training tool in PUBG. This is the perfect place to practice initial shot and burst accuracy. You really should be spending around 5 to 10 minutes in here before every time you play. To get in Aim Labs when you're in the training grounds, hit M to open up your map, and either on the left hand side you can select Aim Labs there or click on the oil tanker towards the north side of the map. I've received comments on previous videos kind of dismissing the need for longer sprays due to how inefficient they can be, but I still feel that they're very important to practice for multiple reasons. For example, when shooting anybody out of a car or a glider, it usually isn't done in a short controlled burst, but rather with a longer and sustained spray. Or there are some times when you have to take someone out quickly and you don't have time to switch to a DMR or sniper rifle, and you start lobbing bullets downfield hoping that you get the knock. And one of the best ways to practice long sprays would be with wall sprays. Wall sprays are exactly what they sound like. You go into the training grounds, go to any of the car depots, which have these incredibly high vaulted walls, and what I and many other players tend to do is we go find these little cement cross sections here and just start shooting over and over and over and over. The goal being to practice long sprays on these walls and try to keep your reticle and spray as center as possible. Also, another helpful way that you can practice doing those micro adjustments and trying to keep your horizontal recoil in check. You can see here where I'm using the AUG with the vert grip, which has no horizontal benefit whatsoever. And as I'm spraying at these walls, I'm trying to keep my red dot as center on that cross section as possible. I would also suggest doing wall sprays with a combination of different attachments, muzzle brake, flash hiders, using different types of grips, and then also using no attachments as well. Again, there's going to be multiple situations where you might not have your preferred loadout, so practicing with your favorite 2 to 3 assault rifles with a combination of different attachments really readies you for any situation. With the obvious benefits that crouching has when it comes to controlling recoil, practicing the art of moving from standing to crouch when engaging in a fight is critical. Some of the easier ways to practice this are similar to wall sprays. I will walk up to just any wall and plaster an anime girl spray on there, and then go from stand to crouch to shoot, then stand back up, stand to crouch to shoot, just kind of over and over. You can also take this to the 200 meter range in the training grounds if you want to get some practice on moving targets, since not every player you're going to encounter is going to be standing perfectly still. I would also implement some type of sprint to fire exercises in here as well, especially because there is a noticeable ADS delay when you go from sprint to crouch, since your character has to bring the gun down from his waist up to the shoulder, which can be kind of disorienting, especially if you're trying to shoot on the move. Scope sprays are one of the most rewarding skills that you can learn with an AR in PUBG. That additional zoom gives you a larger player model to aim at compared to a red dot, making it easier to hit your shots. if you can handle the additional screen shake and added scope animation. While it may seem like spraying with scopes has a higher amount of recoil, they actually have the same level of recoil when compared side by side to a red dot. What makes using a bigger scope so difficult is the level of added screen shake and scope tilt that happens when spraying, meaning that center reticle will always sit a little higher than when using a red dot. To practice scope sprays, we're going to use all the previous tips shown in this video and apply them here. Practice initial shot recovery, wall sprays, and horizontal micro corrections until you feel comfortable using a 3x or higher. When you feel confident, jump into a TDM only using a 3x or 4x scope on your preferred AR and practice until your arms are sore. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. I really appreciate your patience with this one. I know it took a while to get this out, so hopefully you guys found it useful, and if you did, feel free to like and sub, and I will see you guys on the next video. Thank you.